Mona Serageldin received a Bachelor of Science degree in architecture from the Faculty of Engineering of Cairo University in 1961. She came to Harvard in 1965 to pursue graduate studies and was awarded a Master in City Planning degree from the Graduate School of Design in 1967 and a PhD in City and Regional Planning from the Faculty of Arts and Sciences in 1972. Her early professional work focused on technical assistance projects financed by various foreign aid agencies. In 1985, she joined a small applied research group at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, the Center for Urban Development Studies, where she played a key role in developing a portfolio of projects financed by various foreign aid agencies. Initially focused on the Middle East and North Africa, but later expanded to Eastern Europe and Latin America, most projects combine building the professional capacity of local counterparts with technical assistance services. Appointed adjunct professor of urban planning at Harvard in 1998, she retired from a teaching position in 2008. In 2005, she was a co-founder of the Institute for International Urban Development, a not-for-profit technical assistance and capacity building organization that she worked with until her death on May 28, 2018. Since 2005, she had been a member of the Egyptian Higher Council for Planning and Urban Development. In the years preceding the Arab Spring, she worked on the upgrading of Kassoun, a 6-kilometer strip of informal settlements in the mountains overlooking the city of Damascus. The dense linear settlement housed a population of 200,000 living on steep slopes along a geotechnic fault. The development strategy financed by the European Union regularized the informal settlement and provided improved water and sanitation. Detailed improvement plans were prepared for the dense urbanized areas and 2 new sub-districts, including a site to relocate families living in zones with high risk. Leftover spaces were redeveloped as community areas. Project costs were partially defrayed by the development of the high plateau for touristic and commercial facilities. The special effort was made to engage the residents, particularly women and youth. The preparation of the plan was informed by the needs and priorities outlined in community meetings. Perhaps the most ambitious project in her career was her work in Iraq, where she worked for UN Habitat as International Advisor for Spatial Planning from 2015 to the time of her death. In its first phase, the project formulated regional and urban planning strategies in the Kurdistan region, and in its second phase, it prepared a national urban strategy for Iraq. Recognizing the complexity of post-war Iraq, the reconstruction and development strategy is based upon a dialogue between the national government and the governorates, with a new urban agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals providing the framework for the formulation of the policy. A key element was the creation in each governorate of committees composed of local planners and citizens, whose membership reflected the plurality of points of view and integrated them in the planning process. After formulating the outline of the National Urban Strategy, the focus was shifted to Iraq's southern governorates, where development corridors and multi-sectoral growth poles were identified. The characteristics of each governorate was analyzed to identify challenges and potentials. A cluster of 5 governorates sharing common or complementary characteristics was studied. A spatial framework was developed for each cluster. The characteristics of each governorate were analyzed to identify challenges and potential. The development strategy for each governorate was based upon connectivity to development corridors and to multi-sectoral strategies, with special attention to secondary cities. One of the favorite projects, which lasted from 2009 to 2012, was the preparation of an urbanization strategy for the town of Arusha in Tanzania, a secondary city that was growing rapidly as a strategic junction on two of Africa's transnational corridors. It was also the headquarters of the East African Community and the site of two major educational facilities. One of them, the Aga Khan University, funded the project to ensure that it would become part of an urban structure and contribute to its development. A major challenge was the sustained and rapid rise in land values that had resulted in spontaneous development, a deterioration in the infrastructure, and environmental degradation. The project's success necessitated numerical physical interventions, whose success depended largely on the support of an ethnically diverse population, many of whom were recent migrants to the area. An outreach program was created to engage the diverse communities as stakeholders in the development process. Mona gave priority to rallying the support of the different neighborhoods by organizing community meetings to prioritize the needs of each neighborhood. The success of the project was due in part to her ability to rally the support of the Maasai women, who became a liaison with the neighborhoods and helped reach consensus on the key developments. The components of the plan were the construction by the national government of the ring road to divert through traffic, to focus new growth along transportation nodes, and to create new development poles at strategic locations, including the two universities. The team she led at the Institute for International Urban Development was a frequent contributor to the research activities of UN Habitat, the World Bank, and the Inter-American Development Bank. She was the lead author of the State of the Arab Cities in 2012, of the North African sections of the State of African Cities in 2008 and 2010, and Financing Urban Shelter in 2005, all UN Habitat publications. Mona insisted that she was only interested in applied research, that is, the meticulous documentation of what was actually happening in the real world, in order to improve the performance of the interventions she was primarily concerned with. Her reputation as an innovator in the design of urban policies in emerging economies grew steadily during her long career. From 2003 to 2004, she was a member of the Millennium Project Task Force 8 on improving the lives of 100 million slum dwellers, and she authored the Task Force Background Report, Local Authority-Driven Interventions and Processes. Land was always at the center of her thoughts, and she believed that access to service land was at the core of the inclusion or exclusion of the urban poor. In her work building the resiliency of cities to climate change, Mona argued that national policies promoting the Sustainable Development Goals were not sufficient to change the situation on the ground, that regulatory requirements were too complex for small municipalities to enforce, and that low-income households will settle in any event in high-risk areas, eroding the city's resilience. The high value of land and its rapid appreciation impede the implementation of land policies that promote environmental protection and social inclusion. Devastating extreme events prompt action, but blur the differences between disaster management and resilience building. And real estate interests often co-opt participatory processes. Finally, financially constrained localities should improve their capacity to use land as a financing mechanism for resilience building. Egyptian by birth and world traveler by nature, most of Mona's 50 years of professional work took place in the Middle East and North Africa, in South and Central America, and in Southern Africa. It ranges from national and regional strategic interventions to the careful documentation and analysis of innovative ideas. At a time when bilateral aid organizations were advocating Western solutions for the global South, Mona understood that successful interventions required a participatory approach that ensured the incorporation of the rich local culture, and that all stakeholders had to be included in the definition of a solution. At a time when bulldozers were seen as an important implementation tool, Mona was a defender of security of tenure for the poor and the upgrading of informal settlements. At a time when women were ignored, Mona was a fighter for women's rights and their participation in local governance. At a time when static sectoral 30-year plans were standard intervention strategy, Mona was an advocate of strategic interventions, well grounded in reality, and that included the citizen participation in the planning process. She believed that positioning cities and regions in a global economy and understanding the structure of development corridors was the cornerstone of sound national, regional, and local urban planning, and essential to promoting economic development. She believed that policies aimed at poverty alleviation must also take into consideration the remittances of migrants. Mona believed that planning is with people and for people. Professor Alfredo Stein of the University of Manchester, like her a member of the Millennium Project Task Force 8, upon learning of her passing, described her as follows. Mona was so small, and yet what a towering figure she was. So internationalist, and yet so proud of her cultural and national roots. So humble to receive critical comments, and yet so fierce to defend her views. So distant, and yet so frequently getting in touch with old friends for advice. So delicate, and yet so full of life.